On August 10, 1991, housekeepers at the Sheraton Hotel in Martinsburg, West Virginia unlocked room 517 and stepped into a nightmare. There in the bathtub lay the nude body of 44-year-old journalist Danny Casolaro, his wrists slashed deeply and blood in the water. An unsigned note was found nearby that read in part, "I'm sorry, especially to my son." Officially, authorities quickly deemed it as self-inflicted. But almost immediately, those who knew Danny raised alarms. Was this really a suicide? Or had Danny been silenced for digging too deep into a dangerous story? The scene was almost too eerie. A man who had warned his family that someone might try to kill him and make it look like an accident, now dead under mysterious circumstances. This is the story of Danny Casolaro's death, a perplexing case that blurs the line between suicide and conspiracy. Danny Casolaro was not a household name reporter, but a freelance writer from Fairfax, Virginia with a talent for investigation. Born Joseph Daniel Casolaro in 1947, he had spent over 2 decades writing articles, trade journal pieces, and even books of fiction. By 1990, he had sold off a small trade publication business he owned and was eager to dive back into investigative journalism. Friends described Danny as an upbeat, determined man who pursued his stories with passion. He knew his business well, recalled colleague Tom Consolving. If he thought he was onto something, he was probably really onto something. He was also a devoted father to his son Trey. By all accounts, Danny was always upbeat and positive, not the type of guy to kill himself, as his brother Dr. Anthony Casolaro emphatically told the Washington Post. This upbeat journalist would soon find himself entangled in the investigation that became his obsession, an investigation he ominously nicknamed the Octopus. It all began with a tip in summer 1990. A friend suggested Danny look into the Inslaw affair, a complex legal battle between a tiny software company and the U.S. Justice Department. Inslaw's owners, Bill and Nancy Hamilton, claimed that their revolutionary case-tracking program PROMIS had been stolen by officials inside the Reagan administration. As Danny dug deeper, he became convinced that Inslaw was just one tentacle of something much larger. He started to weave together multiple scandals of the 1980s, from the Iran-Contra arms deals to the alleged October surprise plot around the 1980 U.S. election, to the BCCI banking fraud, into one interconnected web. Danny dubbed this supposed secret network the Octopus for its many tentacles of influence. According to Danny's own book proposal, he believed a handful of people have been able to successfully exploit the secret empires of espionage networks, big oil, and organized crime. This octopus spans the globe to control governmental institutions in the United States and abroad. In his theory, stolen PROMIS software might have been sold to intelligence agencies and even hostile regimes. Dirty money may have flowed through BCCI, and shadowy figures possibly connected these events behind the scenes. It was a risky gamble, one that a publisher had recently rejected as not yet backed by enough evidence. Undeterred, Danny pressed on. He planned to write a bombshell book titled The Octopus that, as he pitched it, would be the most explosive investigative story of the 20th century. By mid-1991, after a year of chasing leads, Danny felt he was finally near the truth. He confided to friends and family that he had cracked the case and was on the verge of exposing the Octopus conspiracy. One friend remembers Danny even saying he would soon meet the head of the Octopus, the very mastermind of the conspiracy, during an upcoming trip. For Danny, everything hinged on one last source in West Virginia. In early August 1991, Danny Casolaro set off from his home in Virginia, telling friends he was headed to Martinsburg, West Virginia to meet a crucial informant. He arrived on Thursday, August 8th, and checked into the Sheraton Hotel under his own name. In the days before he left, Danny's behavior gave no hint of despair, quite the opposite. He had been researching this thing for a long time and was very excited about the information he was finally getting, said his close friend Benjamin Mason, who saw Danny just before the trip. He was in good spirits and very excited about the source he was going to see in West Virginia. By all accounts, Danny was energized, not suicidal. Mason, the last friend to see him alive, later insisted, there is no way in the world that he would have killed himself. Yet Danny was also wary. The deeper he dove, the more concerned he grew about his safety. In the weeks leading up to the West Virginia trip, he had given his brother an uncanny warning. Dr. Anthony Casolaro recalled that Danny told him not to believe it if he died in what was reported to be an accident. In other words, if Danny turned up dead under odd circumstances, he didn't want anyone assuming it was natural or self-inflicted. This chilling premonition seemed to come true. On the morning of Saturday, August 10, 1991, Danny missed his planned checkout. By about 1 p.m., hotel staff entered room 517 and found Danny dead in the bathtub. Both wrists had been slashed deeply with a razor blade, so deeply that one investigator noted the cuts were down to the tendons. There was reportedly at least a dozen slashes on his wrist, and the blade was found nearby. Danny's body had no obvious bruises or sign of a struggle in the room, and the door had been locked from the inside. On the desk, they found a brief typed note reading, "Beth will inherit what is left of my estate. I'm sorry, especially to my son." The note was unsigned, an unusual choice for a suicide note. Something immediately felt off to those who knew him. It was not like Danny at all to write a 6-word note, maybe a 4-page letter, but not a note like that. It doesn't add up, his brother said in disbelief after learning of the note's scant contents. Local police in Martinsburg treated the scene as a suicide right out the gate. The county coroner on the scene quickly ruled Danny's death self-inflicted, and astonishingly, his body was sent to a local funeral home within hours. Before Danny's family was even notified, the body was embalmed and his hotel room was scrubbed clean by an industrial cleaning crew. The unusual haste destroyed potential forensic evidence and immediately raised red flags. I've never really heard of someone being embalmed without an investigation or relatives' permission, Dr. Anthony Casolaro protested upon discovering what had been done. It adds to the sense of conspiracy about his death. West Virginia authorities, facing pressure from the family and media, soon walked back the certainty of suicide, at least officially. At this point, nothing is ruled out, said Assistant Prosecutor Cynthia Geither shortly after, indicating that homicide had not been excluded from consideration. A full autopsy was performed at the insistence of Danny's family. However, because the body had been embalmed so quickly, toxicology tests were compromised and any subtle signs of foul play might have been erased. The deputy medical examiner, Dr. James Frost, noted, "We're not ruling out foul play, but I have no evidence of it at this time." As news of Danny Casolaro's death spread, family and friends adamantly rejected the suicide narrative. Those closest to Danny pointed out numerous oddities that made them suspect foul play. For one, Danny's briefcase and research files, the very documents pertaining to the Octopus, were nowhere to be found in his hotel room or car, even though he was known to always travel with his papers. It appeared that all of his notes and tapes had vanished. His family wondered, did someone remove them to cover up what Danny had discovered? Danny's loved ones also stressed how inconsistent the supposed suicide was with his personality and habits. He was always upbeat and positive. He was just not the type of guy to kill himself, Dr. Casolaro said, recalling that his brother had shown no signs of depression. In fact, just days before, Danny had been animated about his impending scoop. His brother noted, "He had a tough going at first, but in the past couple weeks everything seemed to be coming together. A lot seemed to hinge on his source in West Virginia." Danny had been on the cusp of a breakthrough. Hardly a moment, they felt, when he would suddenly take his own life. Moreover, the very manner of death felt dead wrong. Danny hated the sight of blood, noted Wendy Weaver, a longtime girlfriend. Additionally, he didn't like to be seen naked. To be found in a tub, naked, that's not Danny. The brutal scene in the bathroom just didn't seem like something Danny would have done to himself. His close friend Arthur Weinfeld echoed this. The Danny Casolaro, who was my best, beloved friend, was not a person that would have committed suicide, he said flatly. One especially chilling incident bolstered the murder theory. On the very night of Danny's death, back at his home in Virginia, a phone call came in. According to Dr. Casolaro, the family's housekeeper answered the phone that night only to hear a menacing male voice on the line. "You're dead, you bastard," the caller said, and then hung up. This was hours after Danny had already been found dead in Martinsburg. Was it someone who hadn't heard he was already dead, essentially delivering a threat too late? Or was it a taunting message from those responsible, meant to terrorize anyone left who might pursue Danny's work? Either way, it was a frightening development that convinced the Casolaro family that Danny had indeed been murdered for what he knew. Because Danny's investigation touched on sensitive, high-level scandals, even federal authorities took an interest in the case at first. The FBI made tentative inquiries, and former Attorney General Elliot Richardson, who happened to represent the Inslaw company in its legal fight, publicly urged a full federal investigation. Richardson believed Danny was deliberately murdered because he was so close to uncovering sinister elements in what Danny himself had dubbed the Octopus. Despite these calls, no definitive evidence of homicide was produced. After weeks of headlines and mounting public intrigue, the official investigation eventually concluded that Danny Casolaro's death was, in fact, a suicide. West Virginia authorities pointed to the lack of defensive wounds or signs of struggle, the presence of the suicide note, and the medical examiner's findings as reason to uphold the ruling. To this day, no suspects have ever been arrested in relation to Danny's death, and law enforcement has not changed the case's official status, but that has not put the questions to rest. The unresolved nature of Danny Casolaro's demise has given rise to ongoing theories. On one side is the belief that Danny was murdered, a casualty of the very conspiracy he was attempting to expose. Supporters of this theory point to the bizarre circumstances, his warnings to family, the missing files, the threatening phone call, and the premature embalming that erased forensic clues. They suspect that operatives tied to the Octopus, be it corrupt officials, intelligence agents, or criminal figures, eliminated Danny to stop his investigation. If true, Danny Casolaro died because he knew too much, making him, in the eyes of some, a martyr for truth. It wouldn't be the first time, they note, that a whistleblower or investigator met an untimely end under suspicious circumstances. Even another journalist investigating related arms dealing leads, an Englishman named Jonathan Moyle, had died under odd circumstances the year before. To those who subscribe to the murder theory, the pattern is familiar and chilling. On the other side is the official narrative, suicide. Skeptics of the grand conspiracy argue that Danny may have been overwhelmed by the intricate and complicated investigation he had immersed himself in. After a year of chasing shadowy leads across the globe, hitting dead ends, and facing professional setbacks, like his book proposal being rejected, Danny might have fallen into despair. They point out that no concrete smoking gun evidence of an octopus conspiracy was found in his remaining papers. Is it possible that Danny, after betting everything on his story, hit a dead end and in a moment of despair, ended his own life? Some suggest that the very narrative of a murder conspiracy might have been fueled by Danny's distraught family and friends searching for meaning in a senseless tragedy. The question lingers, did Danny know too much about a shady operation, or did he know too much about himself? A poetic way one magazine framed the mystery, hinting that perhaps Danny's worst enemy was his own obsession. More than 3 decades later, the death of Danny Casolaro remains a haunting mystery at the intersection of investigative journalism and conspiracy. Officially closed as a suicide, yet forever shadowed by suspicions of foul play, Danny's story continues to fascinate and disturb. His relentless pursuit of the octopus, that elusive beast of interwoven conspiracies, ultimately cost him his life, one way or another. In the years that followed, Danny's story turned into a cautionary tale. It showed just how dangerous it can be for journalists digging into powerful interests, and how fast public trust can crumble when the official version of events doesn't make sense. Today, Danny Casolaro's name stands as both a symbol of fearless investigative work and a grim reminder of the price that sometimes comes with chasing the truth. Even today, writers and documentarians are retracing Danny's steps, sifting through the fragments of his research in hopes of finding answers that eluded him. New generations continue to ask the same questions that Danny's friends and family shouted in 1991. What really happened in that Martinsburg hotel room? And what secret was Danny Casolaro so dangerously close to uncovering? Perhaps one day the full story behind Danny's death will be brought to light. Until then, we are left with the legacy of his quest and a lingering, unsettling question mark. Danny's final investigation ended in his own tragic death, but the mystery he devoted himself to, and the mystery of his death, lives on, unresolved and unforgettable. The case of Danny Casolaro forces us to consider where the truth lies, and it stands as a somber reminder that sometimes the answers die with the investigator.